I'm not saying I don't like it, I'm saying that it's not serving us. The purpose that it's meant to be serving us for, it's not.
Okay, I'll put it this way. The IMF is a fund. It receives its money from shareholders, so to speak, or investors, which is most of the Western countries, most of Europe and America, put money in the IMF. And then they invest into developing countries. And you know what? They expect a return on that investment to make interest, like any other fund. You know, so we are happy to receive the money when we need it. And there are times when we need it. You know, I don't think we'll find a third world government who will tell you they went to the IMF for the fun of it. It's almost the last resort. Right, Mr. Douglas?
But on that debate, we ourselves here, had a very good program with the IMF from 2002 to 2006. And in fact, the trajectory that the economy is on now, the Dominican economy, has its foundation in the IMF experience. I'm not saying that there's not other things that we have to do, but persons who were at the helm of the economy during that period, when Gerald died, during that period, this man was working down. I mean, this will realize that for an economy like Dominica, that foundation that you got from the 4 years we spent with the fund, and these people were here every quarter. Every quarter. And when they come, it's like when you go to a medical doctor. The medical doctor will, you never mind what you tell the doctor. The doctor will take your blood pressure. He will take your urine test. He will sound you and so on. So never mind what you tell him. He has the scientific evidence on the state of your health, and that's what the IMF function. When they came to Dominica every quarter, they had about 12 fellas. Women to sometimes, and they were specialists in economics, in statistics, accounting, law, and they'll meet all the various, they go to the DBMC, they go to the ECCB, they go to the ECCB, so I'm saying, and we came out of this thing successfully. And the challenge, of course, is for us to maintain that going forward. And
so that we're not reliant.
Yeah.
So that we're not dependent on it. And that is the dependency thing. But I know where you're coming from. The IMF keeps telling us it has changed and it's changing and it's changing, but it has been stigmatized by past experiences. The IMF past experiences, everybody will agree, was horrible to developing nations. These rich countries were making money on the backs of hungry people who didn't have water. So well, yeah.
I wanted to make a comment in relation to the issue of regional integration, because I think that there needs to be a political impetus. You realize that sometimes politicians may know what may be best for the region, what may be best for the country, but because of the securing of votes and all that, to win the next term, they may not do what is called for. There also needs to be a re-education of the masses, because I heard you talk about the whole psychological, mindset, that people need to begin to see Caribbean integration as something that they want. So when you speak about St. Lucia, it's almost like speaking about Portsmouth or St. Joseph, because it's part of one single space. And I think that has been lost along the way. I remember in like about 2007 or so, I was reading a newspaper, and they were talking about, I think it was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Bahamas, and he was of the opinion that it would be good to become part of the CSME. However, the people themselves didn't want to embrace the regime that led to the movement of people, of persons. So as a result of this, they abstained from that. He knew what was right, but if he went against that, he may have lost, ground.
Yeah.
So as a result, so you see, the politicians need to be of that mindset to push the integration process, further. If that is not the case, regional integration will be just in black and white.
Yeah. You make so many interesting points in there. And just to pick up on the Bahamas you mentioned, that wanted to join the CSME. What's interesting, I mean, you are right. There are scholars who argue that even with building this kind of capacity, we still may not have the kind of cloud that's demanded to effect change, and yet still we keep resisting. But interestingly, you look at the CARICOM that had to be pulled together to negotiate the EPA with Europe. It involved more than CARICOM nations. We had to bring in, was it the Dominican Republic and one of the Netherlands countries, because Europe refused to negotiate with CARICOM and then go to the Dominican Republic. The EPA, Economic Partnership Agreements, that was signed with Europe. and Europe decided it couldn't come all the way here to negotiate all of these deals with CARICOM, then go next door to the Dominican Republic and renegotiate the same thing, and go to, is it Suriname or one of these countries that will not get part. So Europe actually dictated the CARICOM that was brought together to sign the EPA. We had to bring in non-CARICOM players in, not because we wanted to, but because someone else dictated that. So you're very right.
Let me make a comment in relation to that. The inclusion of the Dominican Republic in the negotiation, as Mr. Douglas would know, it worked both ways. In the WTO, they talk about something called substantially altering, and we could not have been able to successfully liberalize the amount of tariffs in the CARICOM tariff lines in the CARICOM region to meet that particular criteria. By bringing on board the Dominican Republic, they could liberalize a lot of what we couldn't, and that would allow us to meet the 8%. So, although what you're saying is very true, that the Europeans really wanted the Dominican Republic on board rather than negotiating two different economic partnership agreements. But we in the region saw it to be a benefit to us. Good. Because we depend a lot on customs duties. You know, the fiscal implications would have been great. So Dominican Republic coming on board was of a benefit to us. Just wanted to,
that's great, because I mean, I'm all in favor of that. I was using it as to strengthen your point, that here we are worrying about our membership ourselves, and you know, some scholars argue that even the wider space, we would gain greater scale and influence if we could come together even as a wider Caribbean movement. Any other?
Yeah. I just want to just look at the CSME in a historical perspective. The CSME is the Caribbean single market. It is also the Caribbean single economy. There's no economic space, in my mind, in the region that is a single market. There's no single economy in the region either. The single economy that existed and the single market that existed in the region existed in the days of colonialism. It was a colonial construct that was imposed on the Caribbean people for the purpose of extracting capital in the Caribbean to grow the European economy. You know? So here it is that we are now beginning to adopt and look at a system that already has some historical antecedents and have impacted negatively on our economy and our people, and also our political community. Which suggests to me that we can't then, if you fast forward a little bit, you can't have political, a single market and a single economy if you don't have political unity.
Exactly.
It is impossible.
Yeah. And that's my conclusion. Yeah.
So how do you really have political or integration and political, what do you call it, political
economies of scale? Or
yes, exactly. You know,
without
so it's like a chicken and egg situation.
Yeah, and I was kind of saying it without saying it.
And as well, it also interfered, to my mind, with what's called corporate integration. I listened very carefully when you were talking about corporate integration. I'm not clear what you mean by that, but I suggest, if I'm thinking correctly, you may have meant that, you know, that corporations across countries in the region are able to integrate on a business level and trade and all that, you know. And what has happened in recent times, you know, to a certain extent, if you single a corporation in the Caribbean, it frightens us. It frightens us when that happens. So, you know, how do you know, all the systems, all the structures, all the institutions that would lend themselves to integration in a single market, in a single space, and a single market, and a single economy, you know,
you need some political authority to govern them.
Are very weak, and Caribbean people do not really believe in them.
Which is, yeah. I mean, it's similarly, what everything Mr. Pelletier is saying here is similarly to the lessons that Europe is now having to learn. Everything that they were told before and thought, oh, we can get away with it, fiscal strategy integration, no, that sounds like political union, where just economic. They have had to bite the bullet and go down that road, or the EU would have collapsed in our face. You know, and Obama is catching his backside because he too is realizing that there needs to be greater regulation, greater authority in the global economy. Likewise, in the regional economy, in common sense, you kind of need, you know, similarly to be thinking of this type of authorities.
No, wait a second. No, I always have to take a slightly different view with some of what you were saying there. Because basically, in fact, you see, one has to be innovative. Okay, I mean, in order to be, I mean, you say when you have innovation in the private sector, you need innovation in the political arena and in the whole business of governance. Innovation is a critical component. But here's what I'm saying now. The thing is that the OECS Economic Union is an experiment to get, your economic union without necessarily political, without necessarily political integration.
Yeah.
And of course, I believe it can work. Of course, only time will tell. Our children here will know whether in fact it will work or not. But from my understanding, and Dwight Venner, the governor of the ECCB, I mean, he's one of the lead thinkers behind it. And I've listened to him enough times, and I've done my own homework. And I believe that if we get our act together, we can get it to work. Yeah. I mean, let's take an example, right here in Dominica. Let's take, for example, right here in Dominica. For example, the link in Dominica to the economic union, the fellow called Charles Maynard. Charles Maynard. Well, my friend Mr. Walter would know. Charles Maynard has been sick for the last 6 months. And Charles Maynard post is really vacant.
Okay, I'll take it.
No, I'm not saying. So here it is now. So the kind of momentum we should have been getting on the economic union in Dominica is not happening. Now, straight. I'm not saying that is anything deliberate. I'm not blaming anybody.
Yeah, no,
I'm making a statement of fact. Like if you drop that, it's a fact, it will fall down. So what I'm saying is that I believe that if 10 years from now, Dwight Venner's experiment in economic union doesn't bear fruit, people will say, well, it should have been political. And I say, no. Look at the arrangements, the actual administrative arrangements, whether in fact. Okay, so that's one point. But the point, the second link, so that political union, I don't like that. The second point is the point you made about the corporate. You're absolutely correct. In fact, you must build your thesis on that. Continue your work on that. Because basically, CARICOM has been led by the politicians. And as Martin found out, politicians have to be concerned about survival. And that is not unique to politics. All of us here are concerned about survival. All of us here are concerned about survival. You know what I'm saying? So if whenever there's inconsistency between the politicians surviving and the administrative system not delivering, so he will choose survival, as simple as that. So that is a fundamental weakness in the CARICOM arrangements. So the corporate point you're making there, we have to develop that. And in fact, my final point, whole day today, we were at a seminar, the OTN, the Office of Trade Negotiations, OECS, and right here at them. And in fact, most of the day we were talking about innovation, the innovation system. In fact, you were there. And that was like music to my ears. Because I'm saying that really, you're talking about the corporate, it's a corporate thing you're talking about. In order for corporation to succeed, they have to be competitive. You know what I'm saying? So that is, so we have to be, in fact, Europe have to follow us, not be following them. They went too fast. In fact, we started before them.
But exactly.
We started,
exactly.
And now they find themselves developed now. They have to come back to us because our central bank, in fact, when we had all the problems in Dominica with the IMF, our central bank, our exchange rate was solid. It didn't spill into the monetary policy. You know what I'm saying? So
no, we have some
lessons. So let's throw the baby with
I'm with you.
Let us do what we have to do.
Yeah.
See where the weaknesses are, correct weaknesses, and move on.
Yeah. The only thing I would say, I'm sorry, Darren, before, is I thought it wasn't part of my thesis because I thought OCS was moving towards some regional assembly. I'm sorry, that would it go on then?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
The economic union, excuse me, is headed towards what they call the people's
That's what I
regional assembly, where they're willing to put the opposition parliamentarians as well as the government in the cabinet and have it in Antigua. Use the Antigua House in the meantime.
That's what
location.
Yeah.
So they do plan to include the opposition as well as the cabinet members in that assembly.
But this was been.
Well, I mean, that is part of the treaty. If you get the economic union treaty, June 2010, that treaty, you get the pure and copy.
Is that OECS?
Yeah, the OECS economic union treaty provides for what the young lady said. Okay? So opposition parliamentarians, you know, can in fact.
But that's good. That's progress. That's actually progress from
this year's. CARICOM doesn't have that.
The OCS integration movement is not, and CARICOM, they are not the only models that
very true for integration.
We look at, and that in fact our people are engaged in. There's another union called ALBA.
Oh yes.
And I don't think you have given consideration to that one.
No.
And look at how it juxtaposes, you know, next to CARICOM, for example. You know, and what are the implications in terms of
conflicts? Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. Yeah. Sorry, Dr.
Yeah, I wanted to just when Dr. Douglas was saying, I found out that the Europeans did come to the Caribbean to find out about our union and to learn before they actually started theirs. So my question still, after you presented everything, is like, why can't we make it work? I'm still not.
Politics. Why can't we make it work? Why can't we make it work? Why can't we make it work? We were told that CARICOM took 20 years from treaty to establishment of tariff. Those things take time. I'm not a criticism. These things actually take time. I think even the European Union, they're learning many years later that they had to go back and do what they do in terms of the fiscal integration strategy to survive this crisis that they are in right now. Because those things take time. And certain things actually, there's an argument that Greece should never have been in the euro. It did not meet the right economic conditions. So, you know, certain things take time, and people are sometimes, for political reasons, things are moved and rushed, you know, and then it catches up with us later.
Yeah, because on that point about Greece, for example, I understand that in numbers which they thought they had when Greece was coming in, was in fact
forged.
Numbers were forged. Yeah. And even on the CARICOM side, for example, like Haiti, I mean, I'm not discriminating against anybody, but the decision to bring in Haiti as part of the CSME, that's a political decision, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Haiti, Suriname, these two countries do not have the kind of historical tradition in terms of former British colonies. Their system of common law that we have here and so on. Somebody is innocent until proven guilty. You know, the system, the governance system in Haiti is totally different to ours, as well as Suriname. So, you know, so you have people making decisions sometimes based on criteria that doesn't fall into logic. I mean, doesn't mean to say we shouldn't help Haiti, but to bring Haiti inside the bedroom of the system now, you know, with unlimited ones, you know, it slows it down. You know, that's what it is. It slows it down. And the same point I'm saying that not appointing somebody to continue to work up Mr. Mayhem is slowing it down the same way. Simple as that. Whether it's my father, whoever it is, somebody will do the work. So the thing continues to move at, you know, at a minimum speed. So this is so we must blame ourselves at the end of the day. Because if you decide you want to go to Portsmouth tonight and you want to get there in half an hour, you might. But you can kill some people in the process, you can kill yourself.
A coal might go across the road.
Yeah.
I just want to
Yes,
ask a question. Now on the political federation of the Western Islands failed, but had it been successful, couldn't that have been a precursor to greater integration of economies and all the things we were talking about? In other words, here we lack the federation where the politicians, the laws governing all the islands and so on, they would all give their commitment to the laws and so on. We don't have that. No, we have attitudes. A lot of attitudes have been built up, which are very difficult to eradicate. How are we going to eradicate this without a set of laws that we all accept and abide by? You know? So, I mean,
and that is the political union. That is the politicized.
Yes.
That is, well, the CCJ is supposed to be the rules, the laws, and the CCJ is supposed to be an element of the CSME that provides that kind of structure. I mean, within the revised Treaty of Shagaramas, it does mention the CCJ providing such a role. And we all know, is it just 2 countries that have signed up? 2.5. Does it have? Okay, Tobago. Tobago, we don't do that. 3, okay. Yeah, but it's.
But the OACS, by the way, the intention, as I understand it, the intention is to go in as a group.
Right.
As intention.
Right.
Okay. So we
Right,
know that
which makes sense. But again, you know, Mr. Sever ties into the point Mr. Petty was making earlier in terms of we already had that economic structure, albeit it was not set up for us. Britain, France, all those colonial powers set them up for themselves, but it was basically there. Like you were saying, the Federation had real clout, real authority, real in terms of legal and procedural and rules and regulations, which you know, we're not criticizing ourselves. We sometimes are not too, you know, well, I shouldn't say what I was going to say. But in terms of building of these things, you know, to guide us, you know, you'll be amazed in terms of the European Central Bank, the amount of authority those institutions have, you know, the big stick that they can go around with to put countries in order. We don't have that. We don't have who the CARICOM head of government is going, secretary is going to follow a prime minister and put him in order. I mean, they would appoint, they you know, maybe call it, get rid of him and put somebody else into job. You know.
And they would never want to use the ECW.
Well, you know, it's that type of thing. So how do we overcome that? And I think it's a political maturity. It's that sense of regional maturity that eventually, I think, it will have to come from the people demanding this. You know, I'm a regionalist. I'm a Caribbeanist. I mean, I believe in this. That's why actually, I almost say, that's why I took my time out to do this. But I've done a lot more things. No one sent me to do this. I'm living in the UK. I didn't have to do CARICOM, you know, but I contacted Mr. Peltier. I was passionate about this, and thanks a lot for your early guidance. I mean, you know, it's thanks to you, you gave me the right steer that I could, you know, approach it the way I did, or the way I wanted to go. A professor had to stop me and say to me, Touche, you can't research the future. You can only research the current and the past. So sometimes we're passionate about something, and it's all these questions you're raising, and you know what is right, and you know what we should be doing, and we want. But we're not doing it, so I cannot go on talking about it as if it's happening. It's not. You can only research what is, what has happened, and what is happening. You know.
So I want to talk about my own passion now. So where does the media come in? What's the goal of the media to move this thing forward?
Well, the media can answer that question for themselves. But I think the media have in this moment of information technology and mass communication, and the media today is not the media we knew yesterday. I mean, you blink here, it's out there before we step out of this room. The media has a great role in all of this, and in terms of being informed and educated and knowledgeable is key, because the media is not there to regurgitate and pass on what the minister say. You know, I could be a minister and wake up after a lovely dream last night and just come out and say something. You know, you have to be informed, you have to have the evidence. The media has to research, analyze, you know, verify. You know, but the media can speak for itself, so I'm not standing here to presume to know all things. But all of you guys feel in the media about the role for you in this discussion. The media is doing what the media does best. I don't think I don't know this. Don't feel free. You know, yeah. Okay. Any? Yeah. Okay. Well, but that's what I think. You know, and I mean, recognize this discussion. I know, you know, I'm Dominican, and here we are tricky about. I'm really happy Mr. Dominica is so open and honest in his discussion, because we all feel we have to tread on waters. But this is about the Caribbean region. We are talking about Dominica. You know, we're talking about this. You know, and this integration process that's older than all of us in this room, I think. No offense, Mr. Silver. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Are we only dependent on trade?
Sorry?
Are we only dependent on trade and cultural exchange?
Are we only dependent on trade and cultural exchange in terms of for the right between ourselves in the region, or you say internationally, or just regionally? Or you looking at it? Okay, when you say, I'm trying to understand the question.
Develop your point. Develop your point.
No, yeah, feel free, feel free. When you say are we only dependent on trade, it's necessary that we trade. All countries have to trade to survive. Whether it's trading locally in the Roseau market or intra-regionally between us and St. Lucia and Guadeloupe or internationally. Internationally. Well, yeah, if you think of foreign reserves, foreign direct investment, you know, go on, Mr. Douglas.
Well, I mean, I would actually take it from her, you know, because what I'm saying is that when you go to work, you actually engage in trade, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You are selling your time for your wage. So I mean, work is part of surviving, part of being able to pay bills and so on. So that's a form of trade. When you trade your time for wage, that's a form of trade. So I mean, you can take it at the national level or international level. You know, so you really have to develop your points so we can be clear what you're getting at, because I'm really not sure.
But if you, I mean, are you a student at the college or something? Well, no, that's great, that's great. So, and you can take the advice that Mr. Douglas is giving you to develop your point. I take that advice for myself. I mean, you have to go and do a PhD. I too have to live to develop my point. But I think if you're talking about trade in terms of sectors, tourism, or manufacturing trade, or banana trade, or...
Let me give an example.
Yeah.
Under the EPA, for example, there's trading services where I don't think there's balance and reciprocity because the EU is benefiting more than we are. But you as an architect can go work in Europe, but you have to work under what they call mutual recognition agreement. So if you don't have their standards and meet their standards, you can go, but they can come here, no problem, because so you have to, so that's also trade, where you can also go to Europe and provide your services. There's also other things it provides for cultural industries, performers going to Europe and perform. So it covers so many different aspects, so many different sectors, that it's not just about goods. Services is taking on a bigger role now because we have trained, you know, intellectually, we are all, like you said, PhD, whatever it is, you went to UK to study. So it all depends on what you're looking at. So
it's almost,
I think it's not balanced because the Europeans can more come to us
exactly.
than to them.
It's almost that point about developing that skilled workforce that I was making earlier. And the point Darren is making is the fact that right now Europe is selling a lot of its services to China. China is booming, but China needs Western technology. It needs to learn to do things better, you know. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of booming China, you know. Oops, I shouldn't say that here. No, I mean, as a globalist, I have friends, you know, who are always putting me down. And Gerald, it's hard to believe you're from the third one, man. You're from the island of Dominica. What's this thing about you and this globalized? You should think you're championing. We are not going to get rid of the global order. And when China emerges, China will be the big player, or whoever comes next. You know, I usually say to people, when people say to me, oh, how do you feel about China's rising and it might become the global leader? And, I usually ask them, how did you feel about the past 60 years the United States have been the global leader and doing what it wants around the world? And how do you feel about it? I don't want another person doing this, but it's like the Belgian poet Camus Brathwaite has a line. I remember when I was part of the Dominica Writers Guild and doing poetry and stuff like that. He has a line which says, Rome burns and our slavery begins. And it's understanding the world. There was a time when Europe were colonies of Rome. England was a colony of Rome. Rome invaded England, built the Hadrian Wall, cut the country across. France was gone. You know, these countries were enslaved. They learned from the Romans. As soon as Rome burnt, you know, to use that metaphor, they went out to practice what they had learned. They went out to build their empires. And then what happened to Europe? World War II. Wrecked Europe. Europe. Thank you. I stand corrected. You know, Adolf Hitler and the Europeans started to invade each other's territories and fight amongst themselves for what part of what country is part of my country. Thank God we don't have these problems here. You know, and these people can still today work together like they do. Is that amazing? Is that amazing? These are people who have shot each other, you know, invaded each other's homes, raped each other, and they can do what they're doing today because they know in the economic survival sense. And we don't have this legacy of animosity. Instead, we came on the same boat, you know, to use another metaphor.
What do I'm not posing this question to Gerald per se, but what do you all think about us in the Western Hemisphere paying more attention to our Spanish neighbors who, like us, were colonized and now have emerging economies like Brazil and Panama and those other countries? So not just with
Can I do something?
Yeah.
Because I work with some of the Spanish countries. We live in a Spanish lake, don't we? The Caribbean, we were ringed by Spanish countries, Spanish-speaking countries. One of the, if you want to single out a factor that limits our interaction with the Spanish-speaking countries is the language.
Is that, sorry?
Is the language.
Yeah.
I have met a lot of Caribbean people, intelligent people, trained people, professionals, who seem to abhor learning Spanish. And I believe that, if we have to get anywhere in the Caribbean, and if we have to integrate further with Latin America, for example, we need to learn the language. There is trade between the Spanish-speaking Western Hemisphere and us, but it's almost a one-way trade. They sell most of the things to us. We hardly sell anything to them. We hardly export anything to those countries. Now, to my mind, it would do CARICOM well, the Caribbean region well, for us to sit down and look at this enormous market right at our doorstep. Only recently Barbados has established a flight from Bridgetown to Rio. Or I think it's one of those countries, well, it's in Brazil. But that here it is that we have this enormous market with an enormous amount of resources, a lot of money that they can invest in the region, create this economic space between ourselves. And it's as if we're living 100 years past. We're not thinking about it. And the benefits that can accrue to our people.
What I found out October last year was the U.S. is still involved because Costa Rica, Panama, and those countries have Caribbean, what they call diaspora, I don't like that word, but people of Caribbean descent living on the Caribbean coast. And they would love to get a Grace pepper sauce or a Bello pepper sauce because they still speak English like we do, by the way, a lot of them in Panama, those who that got down the English. And they would love to be able to put their hand on a Caribbean authentic product, but it has to go through America. So the transportation cost, by the time you send it there, it's ridiculous.
There's a community in Costa Rica, Limon, right? That you go to Limon and you think you're in Kingston.
But I was in Panama and I thought I was in Barbados.
Yes. You think you're in Kingston.
Same dialect.
The dialect, the way they speak, the food. But if we have to focus our attention on developing a relationship with those communities that ring those countries on the Caribbean coast, we'll be nickel and diming. We have to integrate ourselves and look at their economies, their strengths, and how we can use their strengths, and our strengths to lift ourselves up as they're lifting themselves up. But to think about, I want to sell pepper sauce to Lemon, that's nickel and diming.
They think bigger than us. Costa Rica has a booming agriculture industry.
Absolutely.
And they have all the climates. They have from coastal to mountain climates and they can grow anything.
Costa Rica has a book. I bought a book and I still have it in Costa Rica at the airport. How to retire in Costa Rica. How to retire in Costa Rica. And you know what the book says? It is a one-stop shop. It tells you